I'm Jonathan Brumley, and we're getting down to the brass tacks and hard facts of hose handling for the Nozzle Firefighter. There's numerous ways to hold on to a hand line. However, in the interior environment, we need a grip that will work without any extra tools, without any additional gimmicks. The grip that we're going to go over now is called the Lockoff. The foundation of the Lockoff starts by keeping the dominant leg up in the air. We'll take that line and go on top of the shelf that we just created by taking our dominant leg and putting it up. Next, we want to keep our knee advance of our ankle. What we don't want to happen is to have the knee stacked on top of the ankle, or worse yet, behind the ankle, because that will open up our hips whenever that nozzle reaction hits. Next, what we want to worry about is what's going on with our down foot. We want to make sure that the toe on our down foot is curled in towards the shin. This is essentially creating a kickstand for us to brace against whenever we open up that hand line. In terms of the hose line itself, if we can keep it high and into our armpit, this further allows us to create enough friction to absorb that nozzle reaction. I wouldn't advise it in the interior environment, but at this point, we should be creating enough friction that we could essentially let go of the hand line and not have that hose line slip just simply by squeezing that in. To further assist in keeping that hose line towards our body, we're gonna shift our back heel towards our objective, and that's gonna put us again in that further stance and further lock in this elbow. We don't want the elbow on top of that shelf, but instead locked in front of that shelf. Let's talk about how much hose we keep out in front of us. The more hose we can keep in front of our body, the better. That allows the hose line to do the work, and our body has to move significantly less to get the water where we want it to go. A good distance is simply just putting a couple of fingers on the bail when we first open up. If for some reason we get choked up and it comes into our body whenever that line opens up, we'll simply just shuffle that hose distance out in front of us to where our fingers are just barely touching once again. We always want to keep both hands underneath the hose line. We never want to get in a position where one hand is on top and one hand is on bottom. The two hands will work against each other, and in some cases will force a kink between our hands that could come back and create a whip issue that would be detrimental in that environment. We're going to have our firefighter open up this line slowly. That'll allow us to settle into this grip and absorb the nozzle reaction that comes with flowing a significant amount of water out of this 2.5-inch line. Now, rather than staying wide in our stance, we want to settle back onto this down toe, that kickstand that we've created. That allows our chest to open wide, breathe easier, and that naturally allows that line to get into the upper part of this environment where we're looking to flow that water. The next grip that we're going to cover is the hip grip. This grip has become widely popularized due to the work of the nozzle forward cadre. Now, in order to get this grip right from the get-go, we want to make sure that we have a solid foundation. The foundation of this is built in the traditional way that a catcher in baseball might set up. A traditional stance for a catcher would have been knees at a 45-degree angle to whatever their center is and their target. You'll also notice that those heels are pretty close together. Now, in order to build a stable grip, we're probably not going to keep our knees up off of the ground. So we're going to drop those knees, but keeping our hips in the same position, again, heels together. Now, the same physics apply between a Lockoff and a hip grip, using triangles to our advantage, grounding that nozzle reaction quickly by keeping the line up in the air. But a glaring dissimilarity between the two grips is that now we're going to keep our dominant leg on the ground, and we're going to kick our non-dominant leg, in this case Derek's left leg, up to the side. Now, we have not changed our hip position. Again, we're still squared off with our knees at a 45-degree angle to whatever our center is. With the up leg, what we're looking to do is not keep it completely straight. We don't keep it tucked into our body where we haven't built our base, but comfortably in between where we're still keeping our entire boot tread on the ground. That allows us to quickly get up out of this position should something occur that would require us to bail. Now, also important is the down knee and the down toe on the dominant leg, in this case, Derek's right leg. So he, again, has built that kickstand like we did in the Lockoff by keeping his toes curled in towards his shin on his right leg. The hose line now is going to come up on top of the shelf. Now, a slight tweak with hand position that I find incredibly beneficial is to position my right hand and the palm of my right hand directly over my belly button. A 2.5 hose line wants to be really straight. In order to achieve that, I have to dramatically open this hose line off to my left side to get that back hand where I want it to be. When I open up this hose line and it becomes more pliable, I'm simply going to use my front hand, in this case the left hand, to then drift that hose line back to center. We'll go ahead and have Derek open up this hose line now. You'll see that we're simply using opposing force of the two palms to hold that hose line into position. If we're doing this correctly, you'll notice that you don't actually even have to grip the hose line to keep it into the core of our body. We want that nozzle reaction driven into our core. Now, we wouldn't do this in the interior environment. We would grip onto this hose line, but that's a good way to tell if you're doing that correctly. If at any point in time you find yourself resting your left arm on top of your up knee, or you find that toe pointed directly at your target, that's a good tell that we need to shift our base and get back to that position where our knees are at 45-degree angles to our center line.